During the 9th century, the emperors of China's Tang Dynasty funded a very specific scientific pursuit, the search for an elixir of eternal life. The Taoist alchemists tasked with this mission spent their days combining and heating natural elements, hoping to stumble upon a mixture that would cure death. Their spiritual experiments relied heavily on earth minerals. One of their frequent ingredients was sulfur, a bright yellow rock known for its low melting point and distinct smell. To this, they added dense pieces of charcoal. The alchemists believed that carbon held the living essence of the wood it was burned from. But these experiments frequently went wrong. Surviving texts from the era include strict warnings about certain mixtures, describing horrific accidents where the alchemists suffered severe burns to their hands and faces, and entire houses burned to the ground. The alchemists failed to find a path to immortality. Instead, by mixing sulfur and charcoal with a third ingredient, they created huoyao, or fire medicine. They had discovered the base formula for gunpowder. That third ingredient was potassium nitrate, commonly called saltpeter. In this chemical triad, the charcoal provides the fuel, and the sulfur acts as a catalyst to lower the ignition temperature. The saltpeter drives the reaction by flooding the burning fuel with oxygen. In the 9th and 10th centuries, this formula only contained about 50. By understanding the limits of their chemical ratios, these early military tacticians took an unpredictable laboratory accident and turned it into a reliable shock-and-awe weapon. This chart shows the iteration of that formula over the following centuries. As Chinese military engineers continuously tweaked the mixture, the saltpeter concentration climbed from 50% up to 91%. By maximizing the available oxygen, the powder crossed the threshold from an incendiary fuel into a high explosive. During the Jin-Song Wars of the 12th century, the weapon casings had to evolve to handle this massive increase in pressure. The fragile bamboo tubes were replaced by rigid, heavy cast iron. This upgrade resulted in devices known as thunderclap and molten metal bombs. The iron casings allowed gas pressure to build to a critical breaking point, generating a shockwave capable of tearing through armor and stone walls. In the 13th century, an engineer made a mechanical adjustment. Instead of letting the explosive force vent outwards, they placed a solid pellet tightly inside an iron tube, blocking the barrel. When detonated, the expanding gas had nowhere to go but forward. By forcing the explosive windage to push a solid object out of the way, they birthed the world's first true bullet and first hand cannon. Containing and directing the explosion took gunpowder from a chaotic, area-of-effect terror weapon and turned it into a highly precise, lethal projectile system. When the Mongol Empire invaded China in the 13th century, they encountered this advanced arsenal firsthand. Recognizing its utility, they rapidly integrated fire lances, bombs, and early cannons into their own highly mobile armies. As the Mongol conquests expanded westward across Eurasia, they acted as a delivery system. The knowledge of saltpeter purification and firearm engineering moved along the Silk Road, quickly reaching the Islamic world and Europe. Once the technology crossed borders, it adapted to the specific siege warfare of those regions. Islamic and European engineers scaled the primitive handheld cannons up into massive, heavy artillery pieces, capable of replacing traditional battering rams. Through their expansion, the Mongols became the physical link between East and West, carrying a localized Chinese defense and spreading it across 3 continents. The widespread adoption of these heavy bombards changed the map of the world. By the 15th century, the high city walls and stone castles that had defined safety for 1,000 years could be reduced to rubble in a single afternoon. But the sociological shift was even more severe. Prior to gunpowder, combat effectiveness required lifelong dedication to a martial art, like mastering the longbow or the sword. Firearms industrialized warfare. Now, almost anyone could be handed a weapon and taught to pull a trigger in a matter of weeks. This global reality is a long way from a dark laboratory in 9th century China, where a small group of Taoist monks mixed sulfur and charcoal in pursuit of eternal life. The alchemists failed to cure death, but the chemical chain reaction they sparked that day achieved a dark immortality of its own, dictating which empires would rise, which would fall, and how every war thereafter would be fought.